Welcome back to The Lost Tactician. Today, we're not exploring the grand sweep of medieval warfare or the strategic brilliance of legendary commanders. Instead, we're descending into something far more insidious, the quiet, creeping death that lurked in the most ordinary corners of daily life. Picture this. You wake in your cottage, the smell of smoke and animal dung thick in the air. You break bread with your family, wash your face in the communal basin, and head out to work the fields. By all accounts, a normal day. But each of these simple acts is a potential death sentence, a tactical misstep in the war against an enemy you cannot see, cannot comprehend, and cannot defeat. This is the story of how medieval people, through no fault of their own, turned their homes into killing fields and their routines into rituals of slow demise. The hidden killers of daily hygiene. Cleanliness, we're told, is next to godliness. But in medieval Europe, the pursuit of hygiene often brought you closer to the grave than to salvation. The public bathhouse, a Roman inheritance that survived into the Middle Ages, became a petri dish of disease. Families and neighbours would share the same tub of water, one after another, each bather adding their filth to the brew. The wealthy bathed first, their servants last, and by the time the final person submerged themselves, they were essentially marinating in a soup of dead skin, bacteria, and bodily secretions. Without any understanding of microbial transmission, people inadvertently passed infections from scabies to dysentery through this seemingly civilized practice. Then there was dental care, which sounds almost comical until you grasp its deadly reality. Medieval people, desperate to maintain white teeth and fresh breath, often resorted to rubbing their gums with abrasive powders made from crushed brick, burnt eggshells, or even pumice. Some went further, using stale urine as a mouthwash, believing its ammonia content would bleach their teeth. While this did have some whitening effect, it also introduced bacteria directly into the mouth, leading to abscesses, gum infections, and systemic blood poisoning that could kill within days. The irony is brutal. In trying to appear healthy, they were inviting death through their very mouths. Hand-washing before preparing food was not a universal practice, and even when it occurred, the water used was often contaminated. Cooks handled raw meat, then bread, then vegetables, creating a highway for pathogens. Fecal-oral transmission of diseases like cholera and typhoid was rampant, yet invisible. People died gasping and dehydrated, never knowing that the meal their mother lovingly prepared had been poisoned by her own unwashed hands. The lethal kitchen food and drink dangers. The medieval kitchen was, well, a chamber of slow poisons. The affluent dined on pewter plates and drank from pewter cups, completely unaware that these vessels contained lead. Now, when acidic foods, like wine, fruit, or pickled vegetables, touched the metal, they leached lead into the meal. Over months and years, this caused lead poisoning, abdominal pain, cognitive decline, kidney failure, and eventually death. Entire noble families succumbed to what they thought were natural ailments, never suspecting their expensive tableware was actually the assassin at their table. Water was distrusted, and for good reason. Wells were frequently dug just a few feet from cesspits, allowing human waste to seep into the drinking supply. Those who avoided ale or watered wine and drank straight from the well were, honestly, gambling with their lives. Waterborne diseases like dysentery turned the intestines inside out, causing such severe dehydration that victims died shriveled and unrecognizable. The cruel paradox was that the very source of life, water, had become a vector of death. Meat preservation was primitive at best. Without refrigeration, flesh was salted, smoked, or simply cooked and eaten quickly. But in the warm months, even salted meat could harbor bacteria. Botulism and salmonella were constant threats. A hearty stew bubbling over the fire might seem safe, but if the meat inside had already begun to rot, no amount of heat could neutralize all the toxins. Families would feast, then spend days writhing in agony as their bodies violently rejected the poison. The home, believe it or not, was a genuine health hazard. Step inside a medieval peasant's home and, well, you step right into a biological hazard zone. The floor was usually covered with rushes or straw, which soaked up spills, food scraps, and even animal waste. These rushes were changed infrequently, sometimes only once or twice a year. Underneath, a rotting layer of organic matter would fester, breeding bacteria and attracting fleas, lice, and rats. The very ground you walked on was just teeming with disease vectors, and children who played on these floors were especially vulnerable. The hearth, of course, provided warmth and light, but it also filled the home with smoke. Without proper chimneys in poorer dwellings, smoke just hung thick in the air, blackening lungs and causing chronic respiratory diseases. Families would huddle close to the fire at night, risking burns and smoke inhalation. Many died in their sleep, not from the cold, but from suffocation or carbon monoxide poisoning, a silent, invisible killer that left no marks. Sanitation was, well, non-existent. Chamber pots were emptied out windows into the streets, creating literal rivers of filth. The infamous cry of Garde l'eau, which, by the way, is a corruption of the French Gardes l'eau, meaning watch out for the water, was the only warning pedestrians received before human waste rained down. This waste attracted rats, which carried fleas, which in turn carried plague. The Black Death's terrible efficiency was enabled by these daily habits, this casual acceptance of living in filth. The unseen enemy, misunderstanding germs, was perhaps the greatest tactical failure of medieval life. The absence of germ theory meant physicians believed in miasma, or bad air, as the source of disease. They thought illness spread through foul odors, so rather than eliminating sources of infection, they focused on covering up smells. Pomanders filled with herbs and spices did nothing to stop bacteria. The real enemy, unfortunately, remained invisible and unconquered. Medical treatments often, quite frankly, hastened death. Bloodletting, the practice of draining blood to balance the body's humours, weakened patients already struggling with infection. Surgeons were often barbers who used the same unwashed blade on multiple patients, spreading infections like wildfire. A minor wound could become gangrenous. A simple operation could end in sepsis. Without antibiotics, even trivial injuries escalated into death sentences. A splinter from wooden bedding, a cut while preparing food, a scraped knee in the fields. Any of these could introduce bacteria that would rage unchecked through the body. The medieval world was a place where survival was never guaranteed, where the simple act of living was a tactical minefield. These people were not ignorant or careless. They were fighting an enemy they couldn't see with tools they simply didn't have. Their deaths remind us that knowledge, sanitation, and medical science are victories hard won over millennia of human suffering. Today we wash our hands, boil our water, and treat infections with pills. These seem mundane, but they represent humanity's greatest tactical triumph, the conquest of the invisible enemy. If this glimpse into history's harshest battlefield moved you, go ahead and hit that like button, share this with fellow history enthusiasts, and subscribe to The Lost Tactician. We'll continue uncovering the brutal truths of survival, strategy, and human endurance throughout history. Until next time, stay vigilant.